difference? Do you know how the spot the difference game looks? What's go $10, anyone? $20? Going once, going twice? The picture needs to be updated. There's been an update there. As I say, like midlife crisis, you know, men get motorcycles, women get haircuts. So here we are. My name is Anzelle Robertson. If we didn't have an opportunity to meet last night, I'm the Mobile Ecosystem Forum's Program Director for our program looking specifically at digital content, the monetization thereof via either direct carrier billing or mobile money, and the advertising of that digital content. Because it's one thing to have great content that we can bill seamlessly and at a recurring frequency if we can't get that content in front of the face of the consumer and in front of the face of the right consumer that's going to give us the best ARPUs, that actually wants the product, etc., etc. So the advertising part we shouldn't overlook either. So I'm the Program Director for DCB Content and Advertising. Insight, impact, interact. The interact part is easy. You were there last night. The interact part is where we facilitate meetings or meetups or moments or opportunities for our members, for guests, for other people relevant to the industry to meet one another and to exchange. But all of that would be hot air. It would just be an opportunity to meet. Then we can just as well all meet at the bar or on Tinder or whatever, if it weren't for the subject matter, and if it weren't for the knowledge, and if it weren't for what we're actually working on and promoting. And that's where the insight and the impact part of MEF comes in. Now, looking firstly at the insight. Because we're a global nonprofit organization, and because our members span the entire globe and different parts of the greater telecoms ecosystem, from RCS to messaging to payments to content to the Internet of Things, we have a large global view. We take that view, we take that combined knowledge and know-how of all our members, and we share that across various markets, across various geos, pretty much to anyone that's willing to listen, because ultimately, no market and no part of the industry is an island. Carrier billing and payments doesn't exist on its own. It's also dependent on bulk messaging when we're sending OTPs for PINs. Digital content doesn't exist on its own because it's dependent on payments. The infrastructure that underpins all of this is important, of course. So in a way, it's all connected, and we have that global view, which we share back to our members and our members' guests. That's the insight part. We commission research, we publish reports, we host webinars, etc. If we're lucky, we can deliver the impact part. Now, the impact part is, if you imagine, Maslow's triangle of needs, where you start, with the basics. You need food, you need water, whatever, and then the pinnacle is self-actualization. It's the part where you do the things that really fulfill you as a human being. That's MEF's impact part, is when this knowledge and this interaction that we facilitate allow us to actually drive impact in a specific market. I'll give you an example of this. The Indonesian market, from a billing and content monetization point of view, was heading for a fall. The market had a regulator, or has a regulator, government-mandated regulator. It has a thriving digital economy, a bunch of consumers that want to consume digital content, a bunch of content providers that want to provide that content, but no clear guideline on how that payment process and subscription process needs to be secured. Whether or not there needs to be a technical anti-fraud system in place, whether or not there needs to be a unified subscription process flow, etc. A number of our members that are active in this market, local players, global players, had said to us, if only the local stakeholders here were able to know how wrong this has gone in other markets and how it can be prevented, that a market actually becomes so chaotic that the payment method is shut off entirely by the MNOs. And that's exactly where MEF was able to come in, using our neutrality, invite all the local MNOs into a room, invite the local regulator into a room, joined by our members, and simply do an educational bit. simply showcase, again, using this global sort of view, and showcase in other markets that had a comparable set of circumstances to yours, this and this and this is what happened. And here it either was still saved and now it's a flourishing market, or here it went terribly wrong. I was so pleased to hear, this was in January, I was so pleased to hear, I think it was 2-3 weeks ago, that a self-regulatory body has now officially been incorporated. So they've registered the name. It'll be called, Gamma? It's now been incorporated. It's in the process of being launched in this market. And yes, it's our members' efforts, of course. It's never MEF, it's never me, it's never Martika. We facilitate. But through this combined effort of our members, actual impact has been driven in a market. And not just for the businesses that's going to profit for this in the long term, for the actual consumer. The consumer, a year from now, 2 years from now, will be way more protected and will be able to complete a mobile payment or enter into a mobile content subscription with a lot more trust and a lot more peace of mind than they were able to do, 2 years ago or last year. And that's the impact part, and that's my favorite part of my job, because I love it when we can actually point to use cases where we made a little change, and with all that's going on in the world. I was in a conversation with someone recently, or 2 people actually, and the one gentleman said, my wife's a teacher, and the other gentleman said, she was a neurosurgeon or something, and the 3 of us were sitting there going, yeah, we're in mobile content. Sometimes it feels a bit intangible, and does it actually matter? Yes, it does matter, and it can matter, but we need to drive that impact among ourselves, because the same very much goes for Africa. And this will segue into, so this all was the introduction and the welcome. Let's just be clear about that. Before I officially start, there's one very important, if not the most important thing I have to do and say. We wouldn't be here today, we wouldn't be able to facilitate this event, which is the first one in the region, and we hope to build on this year on year on year, if it weren't for the support of our sponsoring members. Last night, you already met Rafa from Content for Mobile that sponsored our beautiful meetup on the rooftop. Absolutely loved that the rain started at exactly 5 minutes past 9 when we ended. It was stunning. Today, made possible by Digital Virgo. Eric, if you don't mind just waving a hand in the air if anyone doesn't yet know who you are. Let's give them a round of applause. So again, if it weren't for our members that when I say, MEF is a non-profit organization, right? We're an NGO. We do depend on our members to make sure that Martika and I have a hotel room, that we can rent these beautiful locations, that we actually have the physical, tangible things that we need to make these type of events possible and to facilitate these opportunities for you. So please make use of it, and please take a moment, speak to our sponsors, speak to our supporting members, show some interest in what they do. And the very fact, and not only the supporting members, but anyone, any business that's gone as far as to say, we want to be a part of the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, we want to be part of this conversation, we want to see what's going on in the rest of the world. It already says a lot about that type of organization, I think, but I'm biased. So let's start. Usually we would have some sort of something here that shows me what the time is and how long we're going. So if you see me peeking down to my watch every now and then, I'm not rude. The only thing is my watch, if by the looks of this, I last set when I was in London. So it's 7:45. But it's okay, my maths is just about good enough to +2 to everything. So we're going to start by not only looking at direct carrier billing and mobile payments in Africa, because if you were paying attention, if you've had, I think for me it's around 2 coffees or more, but so if you're in that coffee range, you would have heard me say earlier, no market is an island. And it's so easy for us to forget that, especially those of us that don't work on a global scale. If I'm working only in the South African market, I'm a South African operator, or I'm working only in the Kenyan market, I'm a local payment gateway, it's often difficult to forget, or even if I'm a content provider focusing mostly on Africa, why would I look to Europe? It's difficult to forget there are other people in other parts of the world that do exactly what you do, that do exactly what you do, that do exactly what you do, just for other companies and with other languages on their business cards. And all of us have so much to learn from one another, because it might well be that an issue, that Airtel faced last year has already been solved by Vodafone Germany when they faced it 3 years ago, or the other way around. We've seen actual use cases where the Dutch regulator has learnt and adopted clauses in their code of conduct, in the Dutch code of conduct, that was drafted by the South African regulator years prior. So there's a lot of cross-border learning that can happen. So with that in mind, we are going to call this opening conversation Africa, yes, but we're going to look a bit beyond as well. So today's a conversation, today's interactive. You will have the benefit of this being the first of this event in the region, the first type of this event in the region. So it's really up to all of us to mold. I'm inviting you to be interactive, and let's keep the conversation going also after today. That's very important. It's very important that we don't take everything we learned today, everything we shared today, and stuff it in our pockets and feel great about it today, but then forget about it tomorrow and 2 months and 6 months from now. So we would urge you and invite you to help us keep the conversation going, and to also consider attending our other events coming up. The next one for this year, so beginning of the year, we were at a GSMA event at MTN's beautiful offices. I saw Ray there as well, hosted by the GSMA on fraud and security. So that event specifically looked at protecting payments throughout Africa, with a focus on mobile money, of course. I did a presentation there on behalf of MEF. 18, 19 June, of course, today we're here. And in November, we will be in Cape Town. That coincides with the AfricaCom conference. But I mean, the AfricaCom conference is, at a big scale. So if you want to come somewhere where you're going to meet exactly people from our part of the world, or our part of the industry rather, have a look at our website, have a look at the events section, and you'll see everything that's happening. So let's take a look at direct carrier billing and mobile value-added services globally. There's one thing that direct carrier billing, and every time I refer to DCB, please keep in the back of your mind mobile money, because to an extent, it's very comparable in that there's no card involved, and to complete the payment, I'm not breaking off from my mobile phone. I don't have to go somewhere physically, I don't have to take out a card, I don't have to whatever. So the universal pros of DCB, one thing it has in common in any market in the world, regardless whether it's Asian, whatever, regardless what the subscription flow is, regardless what, one thing it has in common in every market of the world is that it only requires an MSISDN for billability. It's the only thing we need. Yes, you need a technical connection, you need a bind, and you need a this and that and the other, but the common thread is that it's only the MSISDN, which means we immediately have reach, and in the most instances, we immediately have seamlessness from a consumer point of view. I can enter into subscription services without submitting blood samples or whatever. It's generally seamless. We're seeing Google integrate with more and more partners that are opening up DCB as a payment method in various markets in their Play Store. Last night I was chatting to Jason's colleague Evans from M-Pesa, and we were referring back to the watershed moment, I believe it was 2018, right, when M-Pesa opened up as a payment method here in Google's Play Store, which also changed the game, because suddenly consumers that were used to, using M-Pesa to pay for physical goods and services and utilities and the like, could also use it to pay for what was popular at the time, Angry Birds or Flappy Birds or whatever it was, So then for the first time, we saw this uptake of billing this way also for digital content. And that's continuing to happen at a grander scale in the rest of the world. So there's another, when we say that historically the reach and seamlessness has been the common sort of thing regardless of market when we discuss DCB, there's unfortunately also been a common theme regardless of market. Yes, it's been more prominent in some markets than others, but the common downside or the common bitter taste that it's left in the mouths of various markets has been the trust issues. And that's the flip side of the same coin of seamlessness. Because the moment we have a payment method that is frictionless, that isn't properly secured, or that isn't properly at least communicated that this, you know, you're going to be billed for this, you're going to be paying for this, inevitably, and this isn't just true for the mobile services industry, it's true for any industry, it's physical retail even, the moment a payment is going to take place, the less complicated that payment is, or a transaction, or money being passed from one party to another, there's always going to be the chance that someone is going to try and exploit that or abuse that. And unfortunately, DCB has fallen prey to that. Carrier billing has fallen prey to that in many markets over the years. This year is a pivotal time, and I promise you, if you see me next year, this slide won't say 2026 is a pivotal time. It's not like I just update this slide every year and change the year. No, it actually, it really is this year. And I could stand here a very long time and tell you why I think it's specifically this year, or why the data shows this, or the trend shows that, or the trend shows the other. But to touch on only a couple of them. One, many MNOs, let's take a step back. Talking again about the trust issues we were referring to, right? Oftentimes, 5, 6, 10 years ago, mobile network operators in various markets said, we don't want this noise anymore. We don't want this carrier billing noise anymore. Too many complaints, too many issues, we're shutting it down. Or we're not onboarding any more services, or we're not approving any more services, or whatever. There's a very logical, basic reason, if you think about it, why now is a good time. Very few people hold a job for 10 years. And if the ones that at that point in time were decision makers, right, that at that point in time, in 2015, said, no more carrier billing, we're shutting this down, or we don't like it, or we're not approving any services, or we will never approve header enrichment in our market, or whatever, let's assume they were decision makers in 2015. To be decision makers in 2015 means I already had a couple of years' experience behind me. So maybe I was already working at operator X, or regulator X, or whoever that decision-making entity was at that time for 10 years. Now another 10 years has passed, 20 years. So what we're seeing globally at many operators, regulators that have a negative attitude towards carrier billing, it's almost something, yes, but why? Well, because it's always been that way. Because it's what we've inherited. The next person who came and joined this operator or this regulator just heard from the previous person, no, we rather not touch DCB. Too many issues, too many complaints. But there's been a natural ebb and flow of new voices, new technology, new everything, and it's up to us as the industry to go address these legacy perceptions and to go tell regulators, to go tell MNOs, to go tell whoever it was that was initially responsible and is still responsible for maintaining the status quo in markets of DCB's no opportunity, too many complaints, too many issues, everyone's using M-Pesa anyway, why must we consider DCB, blah, blah, blah. To go and have these conversations with these people and go, yes, sir, we don't for a second want to deny that this was an issue in 2015. We don't want to belittle the decisions you made back then, because at the time, they were probably good decisions. But they're not of this day and age anymore, because we've moved on. We've moved on in that content providers, for the most part, are making actual world-class content services, ranging from education, from gaming to streaming. For the most part, we're no longer selling WhatsApp tips and tricks. We're no longer selling basic HTML5 games. You cannot SMS love to 35050 anymore and receive dating tips. You can, if you wanted to. I'm sure someone still offers that. But the point is, from a content perspective, we've moved on, where content providers are reputable, either local, small boutique companies or multinationals, doesn't matter. They're investing in the product. They're investing in the data. They're investing in making sure that they can track the entire consumer journey from beginning to end, etc. So we've moved on from a content point of view. We've moved on, certainly, I think this is where we've moved on the furthest, from technically securing payment and subscription processes. We have actual technology available now that can tell us, or can actually intercept a subscription before it happens on the basis of it being potentially fraudulent or being, it's been iframed, it's been whatever, the consumer's not going to know that they're entering into this. We have software that allows the actual subscription journey to be recorded. So anyone can call the M&O and ask, say, I don't recall entering into this subscription, maybe my kid did it, the M&O could check, oh, here's the recording of it. We've moved on in that regard. So we need to go tell the stakeholders, listen, we've moved on, and you don't have to entertain the same fears that your predecessors entertained, because there is still opportunity. Because what hasn't changed? The reach and the seamlessness. That hasn't changed. And as long as that exists, as long as that remains the case, then I'm a champion for, absolute advocate for direct carrier billing as a payment method, and I think it will really come into its own when offered alongside or in addition to mobile money, certainly in this region, as a payment method. Some of the lastly on the previous point. So, I mentioned the ways in which we've moved on. An important thing I forgot to mention is all those ways and all the opportunities arising from the ways in which we've moved on is what we hope to showcase through the course of today. So listening to the presentations from Content for Mobile, listening to the panel that Digital Virgo have put together that will be curated expertly later on, listening to our other panels, interacting with one another, that's exactly what we're highlighting. What content is now, how good partnerships look now, how CPs are thinking globally but acting locally, putting people on the ground, not trying to, from Europe, say, oh, this is how we must do business here in Africa. Actually making sure we have people here, understanding the culture, understanding. You're going to hear all of this, and hopefully at the end of the afternoon, it gives all of us a bit of, just a little bit of passion. I'm sure the lady that's a neurologist, is proud to say she's a neurologist, and the lady that's a teacher is passionate when a new kid, has learned something they didn't yet know. We should really all feel passionate about what we're doing, because it is a major opportunity, and I hope we instill some of that towards the end of the day. I won't go into the compound annual growth rates and these things. You can easily find this type of data online, and we don't want to just flush you with data today. But one thing to point out here that's important is every chart, whether it's the GSMA publishing it, whether it's Juniper Research, whether it's whoever, every chart, every data piece there, data point says to us, carrier billing is growing and smartphone penetration is growing. Now, I don't know. This is too small, unfortunately, you can't see. It's good to take note. I don't know how the other presentations things look. Maybe we need to zoom in. But this chart here at the bottom, the very right one, you'll see a dark brown, what's it called, bar, and a red bar. That's Ethiopia. The dark brown bar, so the left one of the two, is 44%, and that's the current smartphone penetration. And the red bar is, I believe I can't see that, but it's in the 90s. I believe it was 92%. And that's predicted smartphone penetration in, anyone guess the year? 2030. That's like tomorrow. That's like blink and you miss it. So it's well known already that Ethiopia is one of the fastest growing digital economies in the region, but the spike there in smartphone use, that's insane. And this brings me to an important part of our conversation, and also something that we need to bear in mind for the rest of the day. I had a nice chat last night, was it with Mutoni and Angela about this. Every single day here in Africa, and specifically in Sub-Saharan Africa, is what that chart tells us, or what you need to believe me when I tell you that chart is telling us, because you can't see it. Every single day, a person is picking up a smartphone for the first time. It's second nature to you and me, we know, but there's so many people that for the first time are retiring their 3310 or their feature phone or their whatever, that have only ever interacted via USSD, sent SMSs, maybe a MMS if they're lucky, but picking up a smartphone for the first time and consuming content in the rich interactive ways that smartphones and a 3G connection, which is on one of the other slides and also growing, enables us to do. Now, here's our challenge. We need to bear in mind that there's a learning curve there as well. Everyone that picks up a smartphone for the first time, yes, they want to partake in all these cool things that they've seen all their friends do. They also want the TikTok, they also want the Instagram, they also want to play games, they also want to talk on internet fora, whatever. That's all good and well. But if I'm just now using a smartphone for the first time, perhaps I'd be a little bit more likely to just click on anything that's sent to me, to not understand a payment flow or a subscription flow as I'm clicking through to it, to make a payment I've been prompted to make without really understanding that this will be a recurring payment. So yes, us as business people within the industry, we're getting a bunch of new potential clients, but let's treat them with the understanding that all our new clients, all our new consumers, many of them, it's their first time with a smartphone. And let's keep that in mind when we design our content. Let's keep them in mind when we offer them localized content, when we offer them content in a language they understand, when we tell them in a language they understand that they're going to be charged for this content piece, etc., etc. So, yes, there's going to be a lot of growth, and markets with low card penetration is going to be driving this. We've touched on this briefly before when I referred to our Jakarta use case, but a trend that we're seeing in Europe, at least, is if you look at that chart, the very spiky markets are the markets with the highest direct carrier billing revenue. And if there were another chart that said which markets have self-regulators, and you overlay the two, it would perfectly align. Because France has a self-regulator, Spain has a self-regulator, the Netherlands have a self-regulator, the UK has a self-regulator, and Germany has a sort of self-regulator. And we believe that that's not coincidence. It's not just by mistake. What self-regulation does is, if there's two sides of the spectrum, and one is consumer protection, but one is stimulating business, a self-regulator is the place in the Venn diagram where those two things overlap. And it allows us to really tap into the opportunity that comes with both. Why? Because self-regulators are often made up out of members, and those members often hail from the industry. Take the AFDSM, for example, take WASPA, for example. So there's reason to believe that if people in markets are clever, they would continue considering rolling out this format. A self-regulator never serves to replace an existing government-mandated regulator. Of course not, because that's the left side of the Venn diagram. We need that side of the diagram. It's also important. And it will never seek or serve to only drive business growth at all costs, blah, 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 because that's what businesses do. Businesses want profit and margin and whatever. But it creates that special place in the middle where both things can happen, and that's the sweet spot. Or at least that's what the data tells us. So we talked about DCB as a payment method and its reach, its seamlessness. We've talked about how we've moved on from the things that have created a poor image for DCB in the past. We've talked about the specific African use case of smartphone penetration continuing to rise and rise. Let's look at the content itself. We can have the best, most seamless, amazing billing infrastructure and the ability to bill anyone at the drop of a hat or whatever, but a billing method in itself is useless if it exists only to bill for something that a consumer doesn't actually want. Like, if my credit card would be pointless if I didn't like bicycles and shoes and watches as much as I do. So my point is, a payment method in itself inherently isn't valuable as a thing, as a tool. Its value arises from the fact that it can be used to pay for something, which inherently means that something needs to be desired, needs to be cool, needs to be wanted, And that's where many of us in the room come in today, the content providers. So these services, okay, here they're perhaps archaically referred to as value-added services, which is a word that I think has also received a sort of negative tail to it. I don't believe that. I don't mind the word value-added services. In keeping with the parlance of today, I've actually officially suggested we start calling it value addition as a service, but it hasn't caught on, like no one's using it. So if it does in the future, you heard it here first. Anyway, but these type of services, they were driving the digital economy, because payments would not be made, transactions would not be taking place if it weren't also, and to a large degree, for the consumption of services. So these services form the backbone of a digital economy to a degree. They support content creation. I had a lovely conversation last night about the importance of local content creation and giving a platform to the local voices, to the local creators. Matoni had said, what was the exact words? We have so many stories to tell, and those stories have already been told, and many of them have already been recorded, and they're ready, they're sitting right there. They just need a platform to go out into the world. Obviously, I'm not going to touch on point 2. I think we're all business people. We all know that content obviously drives revenue, but it also drives revenue for MNOs. And I think also for the longest time, MNOs have thought, well, my DCB revenue is maybe a little speck of my total revenue. It's maybe just a little drop in the bucket. But again, it can be so much more if we untap all these other ways in which we can use it. If we start offering it alongside MoMo as a payment method, give the consumer the choice. Let the consumer choose how they want to pay for their subscription service and offer them all these ways. And most importantly, number 3, my scenario that I sketched earlier about this consumer picking up a smartphone for the first time, and for the first time opening the internet browser, the things we take for granted, I'm not going to consume, let's say I'm a gamer, or I want to be a gamer, I like gaming, and the only thing I've ever played is Snake. You remember Snake? Yeah, so I've only ever, whatever these go, I've only played Snake. But I consider myself a gamer because I love playing Snake. I play Snake all the time. When I get my first smartphone, the first game I'm going to play, you know what it's going to be? It's not going to be Metaverse 3000 with my Oculus headset. No, it's going to be Snake in color, probably, or Snake 3D, or Pac-Man. And after that, I might try some first-person shooter thing or whatever. And after that, I might try something where I'm actually playing online in real time. So there's a curve. There's a learning curve, also in content consumption. And that's what we mean by technology adoption. So there's a place in this curve for everyone's content. So it's not to say because you're making Snake 2, I don't know if Snake 2 actually exists, or Premium Snake or whatever, I'm sorry if I'm copyright infringing here, but so it's not to say that if you're making that type of game, you're not a good content provider, because there's a market also for that type of game. It's just important that you ensure that your game gets to the eyes and is marketed to this person who now is picking up their first smartphone. And that you, Mr. Snake 2, are not promoting Snake 2 to the guy who already has an Oculus thing and actually wants to be playing, you know, Blasters of the Universe 4000. I feel like for someone that works in gaming, I should be able to come up with more game titles on the fly, and that's sort of failed, but yeah. So to summarize, I think most important takeaway is no market is an island. I know it's difficult, even like for myself, like preparing for today and starting to work on this Nairobi event. You know, it's very, very soon and very quick that our worlds sort of become like this, you know, like with race horses with the eye things. And I had to remind myself, okay, Anzelle, but there's also other events in September and this, and your colleagues are hosting one in Las Vegas. Maybe check in with them, see with them if they've heard anything cool from the US market. You know, it's quick to forget that we shouldn't be doing this. But let's not do this. There is an increased focus on knowledge sharing and across borders. One thing that's really jumping off the page is when I say here this dialogue involving various stakeholders. Rewind 10, 12 years ago, there was almost a situation, specifically in the mobile value-added services business and the direct carrier billing businesses, where if you had a meeting with an operator, it was almost like you had like in the past, you travel up the mountain and the oracle will see you now and smoke is coming out. It was this big, ooh, moment, I get to meet the operator. But somehow it's almost like the field is all playing, and now we're seeing operators. I mean, we were arranging the Global Carrier Billing Summit, Jason, you've been in Amsterdam. I've had my phone ring and someone very high up at Vodafone Group calling us going, are there going to be cool content providers at the show this year? We saw a lot about payment methods last year. Can we see more content this year? We've got Google ringing us up saying, we want to host a panel at this event, whatever. So it's more like from all sides. It's not this unrequited love sort of relationship anymore where it's like, please take my content, please can I have a good revenue share, please can I have a nice flow. Everyone in the ecosystem is starting to understand that we all are dependent on each other for the business model to work. And that's so refreshing to see, which also brings us back to what year are we in? 2020. 2025 is a good year for this. It's a pivotal time. So that having been said, it concludes our introduction. It concludes, hopefully, a bit of a context for the rest of our conversation to take place. And normally now I would hand over to a master of ceremonies who would say, let's give Anzelle a big round of applause and then invite the next person, but I am also that person. So let's give Anzelle a big round of applause.